I got really nervous all of a sudden. Anyway, whew. All right. Let's see if I can keep this from flying off. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to hold it because it's not going to stay. So in just a little bit, Doug is going to come and talk about lament. We've been going through the Psalms of David. And lament is an expression of sorrow, an expression of pain. It's an articulation of what is happening in the here and now. And it's part of a healing journey in which when we go through the process of lamenting either together or on our own, it opens up a space where we can integrate that part into our life story and allow us to be healed. It allows time for wailing, prayer, anger. And like DJ said earlier, it's definitely not something our culture recognizes, I think, or does very well. I think of a story of when my husband and I were first newlyweds, and we went to a funeral for one of his coworkers. Their child had passed away, and this family was from India. And, you know, we were all allowed to go in to pay our condolences, our respects, to sit there. And then everyone was ushered out. The doors were closed. So I don't know why this makes me want to cry. And then the wailing began. And I've been thinking about that and how, you know, how like cleansing that had to be to just let something out. It's like, this is not fair. And I'm going to let it be known. And over 1/3 of our Psalms are Psalms of lament, either communal lament or personal lament. We even see Jesus lament on the cross. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And usually it starts out with, man, God, this really sucks. Or you suck. Like, he castigates God. He's angry. And then you see him be willing to spill blood even. And then he follows those negative thoughts with praise. And I wonder if David's ability to quickly bounce back was because he was able to acknowledge and identify how he felt and deal with it. So I really just want to take you through a prayer of lament. I know we all have things in our lives to lament. There are things going on in the world that we are lamenting, and we can do this together. So I'd like to settle us in by starting out with a poem. So go ahead and just find a comfortable posture in your seat. Allow your eyes to fall closed. Let's just first start off with a breath. Breathe. The first thing you have to do to live is breathe. Really notice the breath flowing in and out of your nose, the rise and fall of your chest and your belly. What are your emotions trying to tell you? To receive this blessing, all you have to do is let your heart break. Let it crack open. Let it fall apart so that you can see its secret chambers, the hidden spaces where you've hesitated to go. Your entire life is here, inscribed whole upon your heart's walls. Every path taken or left behind, every face you turned towards or turned away, every word spoken in love or in rage, every line of your life you would prefer to leave in shadow, every story that shimmers with treasures known and those you have yet to find. It could take you days to wander these rooms, 40 at least. And so let this be a season for wandering, for trusting the breaking, for tracing the rupture that will return you to the one who waits, who watches, who works within the rending to make your heart whole. So what would happen if we used this age-old practice of lament and we just lanced the boil right here, right now, and put the whole mess back in God's hands? I'm going to read you some scripture, and I'm going to give you time for pause to hash it out with our Creator. I urge you to let whatever comes up, let it rise. Let it yourself feel it, and then release it. Because the work of light happens in the dark. I'm hurting, Lord. Will you forget me forever? How much longer, Lord? Will you look the other way when I am in need? How much longer must I cling to this constant grief? I have endured this shaking of my soul. So how much longer will my enemy have the upper hand? It has been long enough. Take a good look at me, God, and answer me. Breathe your life into my spirit. Bright light, bring light to my eyes in this pitch black darkness, or I will sleep the sleep of death. Don't let my enemy proclaim I've prevailed over him, for all my adversaries will celebrate when I fall. Lord, I have always trusted in your kindness, so answer me. I will yet celebrate with passion and joy when salvation lifts me up. I will sing my song of joy to you, the Most High, for in all of this you have strengthened my soul. My enemies say that I have no Savior, but I know that I have one in you. Hear our cry, Almighty God. Listen to our prayer. How long, O Lord? Our souls are weary from the strain of the life-altering unknowns. Creator, from the depths of our pain and confusion, we cry out to you. From fear-filled hearts and anxious minds, we plead with you. Rescue us. Father of compassion and grace, we lift our eyes to you, the one who sits enthroned in heaven. Life is sacred and precious in your sight. You are the God who sees us and sustains us. Nothing can separate us from your unfailing love and kindness, not even sickness or the fear of tomorrow. You are our light as we walk in this darkness. We will remember to celebrate the beautiful gifts you have given us in this present moment. We are grateful that we are not alone. Lord, hear our prayer. Amen.
All right, a great lead into what we're going to talk about. I just have one announcement, other than saying how great all of you are, and I'm glad you're here. That announcement is that we are updating our contact information. Basically, we're still spamming people who used to come to the church 6 years ago, and we felt like it was time to, bring it accurate. That's not totally true. But anyway, could you do that if you haven't yet? Just do it right now. No big deal. Pull out your phone. This is for two reasons. One is we want to let you know what's going on, and frankly, it's a functional way to use communication so that we don't have to use our service time. And then the second thing is sometimes, we need to get a hold of you because we like you and we do life together and things come up and networks need to be made, and it's great to know your contact information. So, with that being said, Mr. Hunderman to the front. Doug's going to be leading us today. I'm really grateful you took all the time to lead us, so thank you.
Thank you, DJ. It is good to be up front with you again. And I consider it a privilege to be here with you. I'm just going to share something with you. I didn't plan on this, but while we were singing, I'm still kind of moved. While we were singing the hymn, How Great Thou Art, it just brought a memory back that I haven't thought about in a long time. But 3 years ago, I became septic. And at the time, I had no idea how serious that was. But in the middle of the night, they flew me in a jet to Denver from Durango. And I guess that was pretty serious. And left Dorothy at the hospital, ended up on my back in a hospital bed in Denver, not knowing what was going on. I'm kind of in and out of consciousness. And I'm scared. If I were outside, I might say I was scared. I won't say that. But I was scared. And there's nobody in the room. And I just found myself just singing that song. I just started singing. Nobody else is in the room. Thank goodness they didn't have to hear me, because I was praying. And I was just crying out to the Lord using that song. I had no idea what else to do because I was just so scared. And apparently he was there listening. Here I am. You've got to put up with me tonight. Psalms of Lament. As Amy said, more than a third of 150 Psalms in our Bibles are called Psalms of Lament. It's the greatest collection of Psalms in the book of Psalms. There's Psalms of praise and thanksgiving, and there's nice collections of those psalms. But the largest collection are called Psalms of Lament. I got to ask, is there anybody in this room tonight that hasn't cried? Raise your hand. Because then I will know that there's a few liars here. We've all cried, haven't we? And if we haven't physically cried tears, our souls have screamed. I'm very confident that everyone in this room, male or female, we've all cried in one way or another. And that's what a lament is. In the dictionary, as Amy said, lament is to mourn aloud. It's a wailing. It's not, it's ah! It's ah! It's wailing. I kind of felt like that night in the hospital bed. I was desperate. The dictionary goes on to say, to express sorrow, mourning, or regret, often demonstratively. You ever see a clip of a Muslim funeral? Those people wail. They actually hire people to do the wailing. It's a formal part of the mourning process. They take wailing, lament, very serious. It just so happens the Hebrew people are not all that different than the Muslims in terms of their ethnic Semitic backgrounds. In our lives, we're all going to have reason. We're all going to have reasons to wail. None of us is going to escape that. I hate Jesus' words. No, not all of them. But in John 16, he prophesies and promises, doggone it, Jesus, in this world, you know the rest. You know it, Micah. In this world, you will have trouble. There's part of me in the past where I've cussed him out for that. I've cried out, damn it, why'd you say that? But it's the truth, isn't it? He spoke nothing but the truth. In one of the books I have been reading, and DJ has been recommending, how I forgot the title of it. Prayers in the Night by, what's her name? Tish. Yep, Tish Harrison. Excellent book. It's worth a read by all of you. She says you cannot trust God to keep bad things from you. It's like, doggone it. I don't like those words, but it's the truth, isn't it? In this world, we're all going to have trouble. But does that leave us hopeless? It can if we're not careful, but it doesn't have to be. What were the 3 songs about? Trusting God. But in this life, we're all going to have an opportunity to decide whether we can trust God. Whenever we start talking about pain and suffering and lament, there's a topic that tends to come up if you're kind of the philosophical bent, and I used to teach philosophy. What do you do with a sovereign God who doesn't take care of all evil? Is he somebody I can trust? In theological terms, this is the theodicy, really wrestling with God. It puts me in a place, it's a literary, logical dilemma. What do? I want to trust him. but where the heck is he? Have you ever had that feeling? Most of us have. And we may or may not have had various levels of a crisis of faith. I don't care how good a Christian you are. I don't care how shiny your halo is. I don't even have mine on tonight. I don't have one. All I have is Jesus. Many of those who walk into agnosticism or atheism don't do it out of some reasoned thought. In fact, can I prove to you tonight that God exists? Can I prove? Can I prove to you that God doesn't exist? I can't prove either. I think there's evidence that pushes me in a direction of faith. But it's not proof, is it? That's why it's called faith. But many people drift into agnosticism or atheism, not because they've reasoned this out, but because of a deep sense that if there is a God, he cannot be trusted. And every time we are hit, we're forced to ask the question again, whether we do it consciously or subconsciously, is my God trustworthy? Is my God good? But this is tough, isn't it? Doing a message on lament is not fun because we're wrestling with dark stuff. But I believe that when we wrestle through the dark stuff, there's an incredible light on the other side that cannot be described because it is overwhelming. And you know that that's the light of Jesus Christ. An old author, Flannery O'Connor, says of theodicy, it's a problem that cannot be solved, but a mystery to be endured. David, did he endure rough times? As long as we find his name on these pages, it seems like he's running from somebody. He gets anointed king. Anointed king! And where is he in Psalm 31? In a cave. You think that kind of messed with his brain? The high priest anointed me. So this is what it's like. In the cave. And he's running from an enemy. And he spends his whole life running from an enemy. When he finally is king, he still has to run from enemies that are wanting to come against Israel. And within his own family, there's a son who's out to get him. He's constantly running from somebody who's out to chop him off. His faith was tested, it seemed like, every day. Not like ours. The Catholic Church teaches that this thing we call the Bible, there is not a single aspect of the gospel, of the Christian message, that is not in part an answer to the question of evil and human suffering. Philosophically, the problem of evil is always one of the big questions. When I taught down at San Juan College, I knew my students were just waiting for us to get to that question. And when we got to that question, boy, I had no problem getting them to talk. Because they were wrestling with stuff in life. And they were wondering, did I have a chance to preach the gospel at San Juan College? Did I have that right and privilege? Nope. But did the gospel come out? Yep. It can't help but come out when you're faced with people who are suffering. If you have your Bibles, and if we have it on a slide, let's look at Psalm 31 a minute. I'm not going to take the time to walk through the entire psalm. We don't have time for that. I'm just going to walk through the lament. Is there anything we can't bring to God? Is there anything we don't really want to bring to God? All the time. Plus, a lot of us grew up in religious backgrounds and we've learned to be holy. And how you doing, Doug? Oh, I'm fine. My heart may be breaking, but oh no, I'm good. You hear that song on the radio that's being played lately? It's all about that. Oh, I'm fine. Everybody's fine at church. You notice that? And I'm just guessing. Got to get out from under that light a little bit. Yep. I think I see a lot of people who know pain. Am I wrong? We all know pain. And that's okay in terms of expressing it to God. Nothing that I can say to God is off limits. I don't care how ugly I am, and I've been ugly. Notice the first stanza of this psalm. Do we have it up? In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. I'll just stop right there a moment. That's the beginning of the psalm. And it's a declaration, isn't it? And petition at the same time. In you, O Lord, I have taken my refuge. But help! He admits it right from the get-go. Let me never be put to shame. Was he feeling shame, you think, in this moment? Hiding in the cave? The king of the Israelites. There he is, in a cave. That whole first stanza is positive. He's basically proclaiming his trust in the Lord. And then at the end of that stanza, he says, familiar words, into your hands I commit my spirit. Deliver me, Lord, my faithful God. We can't read that verse and not pause a minute. Who else said those words? At the depth of his anguish, Jesus Christ quoted those words. Into your hands I commit my spirit, Lord. I commit my all to you. In the midst of the worst suffering that anybody has suffered, taking all the sins of the world upon himself, being rejected by the Father, or experiencing what seemed to be rejection. And nobody answered him, did they? Where are you? Why have you forsaken me? Did he wail on the cross? He wailed, but ended up saying, into your hands I commit my spirit. Whew. That's awesome stuff. It's one thing, you've just won the lottery. Your wife says, I love you. And hallelujah, Lord, I love you. That's a piece of cake. But when I haven't got enough money to pay the bills, and the dollars are getting smaller as the prices are going up, you know what I mean. Are we going to pay $5 a gallon yet? I'm afraid. We have trouble, don't we? We have a lot of trouble in this world. I hate those. Verse 6. I hate those who cling to worthless idols. As for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I will be glad and rejoice in your love, for you saw my affliction and knew the anguish of my soul. Isn't it interesting that he starts a whole new section with the words, I hate. Boy, isn't he a good little Christian boy? He hates, and he's admitting it to God. I'm not sure I've admitted that to the Lord yet. I'm not sure I want to admit to you that I've ever hated. Come on. You've watched television in the recent months, haven't you? How'd you feel the end of February when you saw Putin's army go into Ukraine? I don't know about you, but the first couple of days, any young people here? I was going to say the P word. I was angry. I was really angry. And there was hatred. There was hatred. If Putin had walked in the door, no doubt, done. At least that was my attitude right then. Now, some months later, who cares about Ukraine? It's old hat. I'm kidding. But hatred in prayer. You have not given me, I skipped a part. For you saw my affliction and the anguish of my soul. This is a guy just pouring his heart out before God. You have not given me into the hands of my enemy, but doggone it, Lord, they're right there. They're right there, and those spears are doggone sharp. So are those swords, and they're not far away. They haven't found me here in the cave, but they're just around the corner. Thanks for not delivering me into their hands. It's crazy when if you spend time, and I recommend, that's why we're doing this, that you spend time in the book of Psalms. You want to get to know your Lord? Read the Psalms. You want to get to know yourself in the context of a relationship with God? Read the Psalms. David is just like you. Everything you have experienced, David has experienced. But it's odd how many times he refers to enemy. In this psalm, he refers to enemy 3 times. And it's just woven. God is number 1, isn't he, in the book of Psalms? You know who's in second place? The enemy. Do we have enemies today? We may not have flesh and blood enemies, but we have enemies, don't we? Depression, despair, anxiety, fear. Do we have enemies? Some of you have really powerful enemies, and you know what I'm talking about. Their enemies are all around us and sometimes right inside of us. Verse 9, he says, "Be merciful to me, Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, my soul and body with grief." Anybody faced with grief? Anybody living with grief? Some of us know grief well, some of us a little less well, but are we all going to experience grief somewhere along the road? Friends of ours, right now, Paul and Rosie, are they grieving? It seems kind of silly sometimes, but if you love dogs, you know why they're grieving. They lost a dog today. Are they grieving? They're grieving. They're not here tonight because they're grieving. They don't want to walk in here with their bright red faces and teary eyes. they're grieving. And it's not pretty, is it? You ever see somebody who's grieving? I just had this afternoon, I had a young woman in my office who's struggling in her marriage. And she's actively dating another guy. And she's trying to figure out what to do. And guess what happened? The floodgates opened up. And she's an average, attractive-looking woman, but boy, did she get ugly looking. Bawling eyes, snot running out of her nose. Her nose was making noise, but it wasn't attractive. And, the Kleenex box becomes hers. Sorrow is not pretty, is it? And David's admitting, I'm in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, and my soul and body with grief. It's consumed him totally, hasn't it? My life is consumed by anguish, and my years from groaning. My strength fails because of my affliction, and my bones grow weak. Sometimes the suffering that we suffer can take years, can't it? We like to say, it'll be over soon. But guess what? It isn't always over soon, is it? Sometimes the suffering goes on for years. How do you think the Ukrainians are feeling right now? It's been a few months now. How many more months is this thing going to go on? Has it seemed like an eternity to them already? Can you imagine those people hiding in that manufacturing place where they were hiding in the tunnels underneath there for weeks on end? It must have seemed like years on end. My bones grow weak because of all my enemies. The second message. I am the utter contempt of my neighbors and an object of dread to my closest friends. Those who see me on the streets flee from me. I've never experienced that. I have been shunned by, him or her, but never everybody. It looks like he was shunned by everyone. Everyone avoided him. He was isolated and alone, and yet he still came back. You are my Lord. Did he wrestle with the theological, philosophical questions about a sovereign God and evil? Nope. He just endured. He pushed through, and he always ended up saying, you, Lord, you are my Lord. Look around the world today. Do we know isolation and loneliness in this world? It's everywhere. Just look at this past weekend, people. What was in the news the past few days but those 10 people that lost their lives in Buffalo? One 18-year-old goes in there with his gun and mows 13 people down, and 10 people die. That's been in the news. But what we haven't heard a whole lot about is all the other mass shootings that went on this weekend all around the country. No, 10 people didn't die, but 3 did, 4 did. All, just about every big city that you can name, yep, there was a mass shooting in that city this past weekend. What is going on? We live in a society that's really sick, seriously sick. There's a spiritual sickness amongst us, and people are lonely. Why are they shooting each other up? Well, I get some attention that way. I get heard, don't I? It's a sick way of thinking, but when people are lonely, they look for any way to alleviate that isolation. And it's happening more and more and more, isn't it? I was talking with Dorothy the other day. When we go to the grocery store, when we go to the library, when we go anywhere in town, we really have to keep our eyes open. Just to be aware of what's going on around us. It's frustrating to have to talk to each other that way. Because basically, what is that? Fear, exactly. David had reason to be afraid, but he always came back to, I'm going to trust you, Lord. Even though I'm a broken vessel. I thought about taking a piece of pottery and accidentally bumping it, just letting it crash to the floor. Just my luck, it wouldn't break. So just talk about it. What good is a broken vessel? It's worthless, isn't it? It's nothing. And David says, I have become like broken pottery. Worthless, nothing. And yet, he constantly comes back, and he is, all these terrible, ugly words he's expressing, he is saying to his Lord. He's not off in some private corner just wallowing in himself. Oh, I'm miserable, I'm miserable. I'm miserable! He's talking to his God, and he trusts in spite of everything. He sees me, and he hears me. I want to go to one other thing, just to underscore kind of the ugliness of praying honestly before God. Psalm 137. It's only 9 verses. This is a group prayer. Where'd Amy go? She said there's 2 kinds of prayers. There's the individual prayer, and there's the group prayer. Psalm 137 is not written by David. This is written sometime when the Israelites are captive in Babylon. They're there for 70 years. They want to be in Jerusalem, don't they? Jerusalem is that's Mount Zion. That's where God dwells. And where are they? They're on the rivers of Babylon. They say, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. They remembered Zion and they just wept. There on the poplars, we hung our harps. They hung their harps. They're not playing the harps. They hung them along the riverbanks. For there our captors asked us for a song. They couldn't sing because people were tormenting them. Come on, you Hebrews, sing for us. But they were just taunting them. Sing us one of those songs of Zion. Come on. Can they sing when you're being taunted like that? Not really. How can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a foreign land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. Again, Jerusalem represents the presence of God, their highest joy. Remember, Lord, what the Edomites did on the day Jerusalem fell. Tear it down, they cried. Tear it down to the foundations. Daughter, Babylon, doomed to destruction. Happy is the one who repays you according to what you have done to us. And now listen. Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. That really belongs right in the center of my Bible, doesn't it? You know, there's a lot of devotionals and hymn books that have been written using this psalm, and they delete that verse because it's too ugly that the people of God would pray, happy is the one who gets your little ones and smashes them on the rocks. really Christ-like, isn't it? No, it isn't. But it's honest, isn't it? The exiles, they're in pain, aren't they? They're in their own cave. Babylon is like David's cave to them. They're trapped and they're angry, they're upset, they're in pain, they're in anguish. And what do? They let it fly. A lot of times, we don't let it fly. And we get all pretty. Lord, it's just little old me, Doug. You know, if you care a little bit for me, maybe you could bend my way a little bit. But what am I really feeling inside? Ugh! How many times is anger expressed in the Psalms? It's almost endless. There's so many expressions of anger. This is pure, raw hatred in our Bibles, expressed by a people whose former king was a man called a man after my own heart, God said. And now these people are in such a place of hatred. Does the Bible legitimize this hate? He permits his people to express the hatred. But God nowhere says, good job. But we mustn't take verses like this and remove them, though. If we're in that place of hatred, it must be prayed. Our tendency is to go, yeah, I'm a little ticked off, Lord. Because we don't really want to admit the truth because, God's in his holy temple. I don't want to defile the temple. I won't defile the temple. I can't defile the temple if I'm being honest with my Lord. When I'm angry, I'm going to say it. When I'm pissed, aren't I? When I'm scared, I'm scared. I'm not wrestling with the theodicy as some abstract philosophical thing. I'm wrestling with, is he really there? And why do you seem so far away if you are there? And why aren't you answering me just the way I want you to answer me? Doggone it. I'm pissed. I'm angry. I'm hurt. You ever go to the doctor? You've got a broken arm. What's your problem? Oh, I'm really doing pretty good. Oh, yeah, it's just a little thing. That would be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? But we go to God like that. Yeah, I'm kind of down, Lord. No, I am really down. I am desperate. I'm angry. Can you guys keep a secret? Because I'm going to share something here. At one point in my life, I had a very strange walk with the Lord. No one's going to commit me, will they? When Dorothy and I lived up in Granby, Colorado, it's right by Rocky Mountain National Park and Winter Park ski area. It was an interesting time. I had a very, very close, intimate fellowship with him. He was almost like my best friend who was just always there, and I didn't have to pray because I was always talking with him. I was always praying. And then that's not a pat me on the back. It's just where I was living, and I needed help. At this particular time, it was winter, I was working as an electrician. Where I'm going with this may interest you because I threw my hammer at Jesus. I really did. I threw my hammer at him. Because in the midst of my ups and downs, I spent hour after hour working in these condominium projects, and I was pulling wire, and it was below zero. 2 months out of that year, it did not break zero. It was below zero for 2 months. And every time you pulled a piece of wire in the roughing timber, what would happen with the sheath? Crack. It's too cold, isn't it? I would work with these, the old salamander heaters. I think they still use them today, don't they? There's somebody who knows what I'm talking about. And I had 2 of them that I just dragged everywhere with me, trying to keep a little warm, keep the wire jacket warm. But one time I was finishing out a condominium project, hanging the light fixtures, putting, covers and plates on the receptacles and the switches. And I went through a period where that dang Jesus, he wouldn't leave me alone. There are times where I wonder, where the heck are you? But in this particular moment in my life, he wouldn't leave me alone. And I kept hearing these things about, why don't you go back to school? Why don't you go into full-time ministry? No! I did not want to go into ministry. I did not want that to be my life's calling. So I said no. And every day I'd be pulling more wire, working in the condominiums. And guess what? That sucker was just right over there. He wasn't really saying a whole lot to me, just leaning against the wall with kind of a smug look on his face, kind of that knowing look. I swore he wouldn't leave me alone. And finally, I had had enough of him. After all, I had work to do. And I was peed off. And I was going to take care of him. I was putting a receptacle and the cover on a plug on the wall of a kitchen. I'm not supposed to walk over here. I want you to be able to see me. I want you to imagine that I'm in a dining area. There's no dining table. It's just a new building. But I'm wiring this receptacle underneath a countertop. And I'm working over there. And Jesus is against the dining room wall, living room wall. And it's a shared wall with the neighboring condo. And I've had it. I have had enough of this guy. Hammer. He'll never see it coming. So I'm over here fixing the receptacle and slowly reach. Sammer's over here on the right side. He's over there. He can't see it. I've got this figured out. And my right hand's doing this or that, pretending to use tools. And my left hand, I slowly pull the hammer out. I get it in my... I'm serious, I did this. I really did this. And I had the hammer in my right hand. And I said, okay, I'm going to have to be fast. And as fast as I could, I stood up, swung around, and threw that hammer with all my might at Jesus. I really did this. He moves fast. I missed him. But there was a big hole in the dining room wall, right through the drywall, through the soundboard, through the drywall of the next condominium. I couldn't get my hammer from that condominium. I had to go all the way around. Why tell a stupid story like that? I was sick and tired of him. And yet he was not sick and tired of me. And here I am. Apparently, I didn't knock him off the throne. It seems like he's still the king. And he never punished me for throwing the hammer at him. I think he said, thanks for being honest, fella, because I was pissed. I had had enough of him. And he took it. No, he didn't stand there and take it. If he had just stood still, there wouldn't have even been a dent in the wall. But no, I had to go sneak around to the other condo, grab my hammer, and did I say anything to anybody about it? No. With all my courage, I slunk away. Missed Jesus, and now I got that hole hanging over my head that I never honestly told anybody about. Who should have fixed it and paid for it? I got away with it. I got away with throwing my hammer at God. But that's a prayer life. Is that really a prayer life? That's how he wants us to pray. No, don't go home and get your hammers out. But he wants you and allows you to be who you are in all your ugliness. And it's through the ugliness of this world that he takes us. He never removes us from the tough times, does he? He usually takes us through the fire, and we come out different. This past 3 years I've shared with DJ that have been a tough 3 years for me. 3 years ago, kind of a little less than 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had to go to Denver for, I'm an amputee. I won't tell you about it. But I lost part of my body. And then came home, and a month later, you already know the story, I was flown back to Denver being septic. That was a tough year and long recovery. The doctor said it takes 12 to 24 months for people to recover their energy and strength from sepsis. And while I'm recovering from sepsis, my only and younger sister dies from ovarian cancer. That winter following my cancer, we became like this when we both discovered we had cancer. Her battle was long. Mine was months. Hers was years. She lost her battle. After I won my battle, did I feel guilty? I'm her big brother. I'm supposed to take care of my sister. She dies, here I am. 2 months to the day that she died, my dad died. He died from a bloody nose. Literally. They couldn't stop the bleeding. And he just went to sleep. Actually, a beautiful way to go. But no funeral, right in the middle of, the pandemic. No funeral. Months later, we sneak into literally have to kind of sneak into a city park where we had a memorial service for him. At my sister's funeral, I'm still recovering from sepsis, and my brother-in-law asked me to officiate at my sister's funeral. One of the hardest things I've ever done. But she knew the Lord, and she loved the Lord, and she kicked my butt in terms of faith. My younger sister taught me an awful lot about where I needed growth. I'm not done with that story. So a year ago, right now, all of a sudden I had a major GI bleed, which meant the blood in my body just said, adios, Hunderman. Half my blood, just gone. For a second time, Dorothy has to drag me out of the house and get me to the ER. And so now I got another long recovery. How long does it take our bodies to recover all that blood? It doesn't happen in a couple of days. And then, we're not done. Then in August, this past August, I get a very significant UTI. And I was back in the hospital. Again, 4 times in the hospital in 3 years. And I'm getting really sick of it. And during this whole process, I had my own theodicy. Where are you? Where are you, Lord? But every time I've asked that question, every time I've shook my fist at him, every time I've gotten pissed off at him, he just keeps loving me. And he proves over and over, even though in the middle of the crisis it's hard to see, you can trust me. You can trust me with whatever. I don't care how ugly you get, Doug, you're mine. You're stuck with me, fella. Just like Jesus in that kitchen. You're stuck with me. And you're not going to understand. You're not going to have all the answers. I can't answer why there's all this pain in this world. I don't get it. But God always uses it. He always uses it. Even the hatred that's expressed, God uses. Does somebody maybe need to pray in that hatred for the Ukrainians? What kind of prayer will that look like? It's going to be passionate, isn't it? It's going to be heartfelt. It's going to be sincere. Does God use that? Nothing goes to waste. Your tears, your ugliness, your runny noses. It's all part of what God uses to make you who you are. You are not yet who you're supposed to be. And the good news is, in this world, you will have trouble. But remember, I've overcome the world. All the suffering that you've gone through, I've gone through, Jesus says. And even worse. And does the Father understand our pain? Well, he watched his only son die. That's a whole different kind of pain, isn't it? A parent should never see their child die. But the father knew the pain of a father watching his son die. That's an awesome kind of pain. We worship a God who knows our pain. He's been through it. And every ounce of pain and suffering you will go through, he will use for your benefit. But it's a mystery, isn't it? It's a mystery. You know what? It's getting late, but can we sing a song? We already sang it tonight, the first one. Why do I want you to sing that song? Because it's a proclamation. In spite of everything, if you're willing.
You want me to?
Yep. Can we get the music? Can we get the music up on the wall? This is unplanned. Yep, the first one, I think. Yeah. Isn't that a proclamation of faith? And when we sang that, I thought,